Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Half a Clue Movie Review. And welcome to the month of November. We, the Half a Clue crew, are going to be doing Key-November. That is Kino November. It's a word that Jason hates, the internet invented. I started using it ironically, but have just started using in everyday speech. Kino just means the cream of the crop, the top of the tier, the gold of the goose, you know. It's the ultimate picks. So 4 weeks of November, 4 hosts, 4 Kino movies. Miles, you are up first. What is your pick for Key-November?
For this week, I chose my favorite Guillermo del Toro film, Pan's Labyrinth. It's a beautiful movie, the first movie of his that I watched, and also maybe the first foreign language film that I watched. I don't know for certain, but I believe it is.
I just find it funny that for a guy that hates horror, you pick such a horror influenced
Yeah, that is
movie.
funny.
Okay, first of all, this is a dark fantasy. It is not a horror movie.
I agree with that, but there's certainly horror elements in it.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, everything has elements of other things in it. I mean,
This has
that doesn't make it a horror film.
There's some pretty heavy
This has some
influences,
heavy
though.
horror influences. It's okay. I'm down with it. I just thought it was funny that you were so excited for October to be over for your first pick. Not October is horror. I don't know. Just interesting.
I mean, well, we're doing Kino November. Most of my other picks that I wanted to do were trash movies. We'll get to those eventually.
Fair enough. Ronald, you're the history person, so speak.
All right, let's do some history. In 2004, Guillermo
Take out your calculators.
yeah. You're All right. In 2004, Guillermo del Toro left behind his notebook in the back of a cab in London. The notebook was filled with drawings and notes that had taken him years to compile. Losing this was, of course, devastating to him, and he figured that would be the end of this particular project. Thankfully, the cab driver found the book and quickly realized how important it was and managed to track down Guillermo and reunite him with his book. Del Toro took this as a sign and decided to finally bring his vision of a modern dark fairy tale to life. The film was, of course...
Pinocchio.
Exactly.
Blade 2.
The acclaimed masterpiece, Pan's Labyrinth. Guillermo del Toro's films always carried an undertone of fantasy and fairy tale influences, from Kronos, The Devil's Backbone, to his Hollywood debut film, Blade 2, and Hellboy. But through Pan's Labyrinth, he brought together all of these elements to provide, from his previous works, to a perfect blend. This would be his return to his Spanish-language film roots, and the final as of this date. I kind of want him to do another Spanish film.
Yeah.
I would be interested in
It'd be
seeing
cool.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
Yeah.
history over.
Okay. Well, that was a good little history lesson there.
Yeah,
What a nice guy that cab driver is.
So-
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
What a he should have given him a special thanks.
yeah.
Should have gotten a credit in the movie.
Yeah.
You can put
Honestly-
away your calculators. History's over, kids.
Yeah. I kind of wish I'd gotten a little more in depth, but it's next
Oh,
time.
it's
next
fine.
time.
It's fine. You had a fun little story. It works.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've seen images of photographs of like the drawing and artwork that he does when he's preparing for his films. And it's just so amazing, like the level of inspiration that he has.
Oh, yeah.
When he looks at stuff, and he has this very distinct vision that you can see from way in pre-production. The images that he draws that kind of make it into the final film, even though it gets more refined and it changes over time. The initial shape and the initial feeling that you get remains all the way through, and he has a very distinct vision. And he knows what he wants the film to be, and he accomplishes that pretty much all the time when he sets out to do it.
Yeah, it must be a dream to be a special effects artist and work with him.
Oh yeah,
Like, that's got to be, like, the best job ever.
I was watching some of the behind the scenes of like the VFX, and some of those guys they were like, it was a little frustrating at times because they said with most directors you would show them like, oh, so this is like kind of what I thought of, we could go with like the creature design or whatever, and he'd say like, oh yeah, sure, that's good enough, like that's good, let's do it, or maybe a little tweak, whatever. But Guillermo is like, no. He's like, it's got to do this. How about that? How about try this, and that, and then like, they do a whole myriad of things. And then he's like, okay, I want you to pull this from that. I want you to add this to there, and like do like all. He's always constantly tweaking because he has a very particular vision, and it's so evident because you can see it in all of his works. Those same kind of style elements and creature designs that always shine through. That just makes it look and feel like a Del Toro project.
Yeah,
And
when you said that, Jason, I was like, I don't think it'd be fun.
Yeah.
I think
I
it
mean,
would
we
be.
we watched Steve Jobs. We know what geniuses are like.
I mean, I think it kind of is though, because they also seem to be very excited that they're like, it pushes you, right? Like it kind of it pushes that artist to the next level, and kind of like you have to find something in yourself too. And he also makes them pull back from tons of different influences too, not like anything standard. He's like, I never want like my creatures or all like the designs to resemble something else, like no one-to-one things. He says like he hates it when like an artist will show him something and he's like, oh, I can see exactly where you got that from.
Yeah.
He wants to look at it and be like, whoa, what is that? Like it's completely unique. And it's obviously like we said, he has his own drawings and stuff. But yeah, he takes from obscure and like, you know.
That was one of the most interesting thing. We watched the Criterion Collection release of Pan's Labyrinth.
It's awesome.
And afterwards, Ron and I were watching. It was an interview between him and I forget what her name was.
I didn't catch it.
Her last name was Funk. She did the book of Pan's Labyrinth, but they were talking about where they drew inspiration from and like the origin of these fairy tales. And it was just so interesting seeing how everything in this film is influenced by old obscure fairy tales from all around the world. And just being able to see that in all the different elements, you know, from the frog to the actual scene where she's having dinner, or where the Thin Man is in there and she's not able to eat the food. And it's all got influences coming from these different areas, but you don't notice them because they're older, they're obscure, or they're very archaic. It's just beautiful seeing him bring all those elements together into a very cohesive film.
And even some modern things like her red shoes, kind of, you get like that Wizard of Oz influence.
She even like kind of like moves them in a certain way. Yeah, it's very Wizard of Oz.
And like the Thin Man, like you said, the pale man, he's like he's supposed to be an ogre. And it's kind of like you definitely see, you get the idea of like an ogre from him, but he's not that classic.
He looks nothing like an ogre.
Yeah,
I've never gotten the idea of an ogre from him before.
Well, it's like him eating children or shit like that, like him killing kids and shit. It's so great. And he took some influence from, I think, Francisco Goya's like painting of a Kronos devouring his sons. It's like, it's awesome. Like, you know, he pulls from everywhere, and that's what helps give him such a unique feel and blend. It's really cool.
So I guess we should ask, what are your experiences with Guillermo del Toro's films? Jason?
I mean, I've seen this. I've seen Blade 2. I've seen Pacific Rim, Crimson Peak, and The Shape of Water. And I've enjoyed every single one. I mean, actually, not true. I need to rewatch Crimson Peak. I don't think I was in the right mood for that movie. Maybe I just saw the trailer and thought it was going to be something different. I would love to rewatch that, though, because
I do have the special edition of that if you ever want to watch it.
I'm down to watch that with you.
It's an awesome looking physical edition, too.
I just love how each one of those films just feels so fucking different. But you can also tell that there's that Del Toro flair in there. I love Pacific Rim just because of how weird and goofy it gets.
Yeah.
I had a blast watching that in theaters. It made me feel like a kid watching Power Rangers again. You know, and same with Shape of Water. Like, that was a super fun movie. That was just, you know, kind of out there, but like kind of fun at the same time, but also serious. I don't know. He has a very unique style when it comes to storytelling that like it can pull you in any which direction at any given time. And I love that.
And I do want to mention for this movie, Pan's Labyrinth, The Shape of Water, and Hellboy, Doug Jones.
Oh, I've also seen both Hellboy movies.
Yeah. Doug Jones is kind of the critical monster puppeteer,
Fucking
I
love
guess you
Doug
would call him.
Jones.
Yeah.
And I think that he really helps to make the films.
Oh, yeah.
Significantly. Be it the fact that he's able to really execute on what Guillermo del Toro has planned, and also just being just an amazing actor in his own right.
I think Del Toro mentioned it during Shape of Water that it's crucial to not just have a physical performer, but also an actor underneath all that prosthetics, and to help really bring all the little intricacies and like the tiny subtleties that it really takes to really fill a character with life. Because there's tons of, it takes a lot. There's so many fantastic creatures throughout cinema that have like taken really great physical actors to pull them off, but Del Toro demands more, I think, rather than he's like, okay, yeah, like with the Fawn in this character is probably his best work, I think, from what Doug Jones does, like his movements from when he starts off, when he's first kind of like reanimated to the end, and his like very flowy, elegant kind of feel. It's
Elegant.
No, it's quite beautiful, because if you look at him scene by scene, he changes how he moves as that Fawn character, right? Also, his skin clears up a little bit. He has less moss on him, but he's coming back to life throughout the film. And I think that it was beautiful that it was done that way. And it was so subtly done that you don't notice it on your first or your second watch. You kind of get the hints of it when you rewatch it. Yeah.
So my first Del Toro film was probably Blade 2. And that's, I think that was the first Blade movie I saw, and I was like, this is so cool. And that's definitely the origin of my love for Blade. Then probably Hellboy, and then I saw Pan's Labyrinth. But I don't even think I even knew that he directed this movie. Like, maybe I did. I remember just renting it, just because, like, I've always liked fantasy stuff. Like, that was around the time, like, of course, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. Maybe Chronicles of Narnia was around this time. I don't know. But I was like,
it was around this time.
So I was like, all right, let me watch this, and it just, I don't know, like it affected me so much. It's such a haunting film, and just from that, like, we can get into it chronologically when things happen, but like with the bottle scene, it just completely changed, how I could approach or watch this film. Like it just, it's stuck with me, and yeah, it's just one of my favorite films of all time. I also saw Pacific Rim, of course, Crimson Peak, Shape of Water, and Nightmare Alley, and his most recent one, Pinocchio, which was also very cool.
I haven't seen Pinocchio. I mean to see it at some point.
That's up your alley. It's like weird stop motion.
Yeah, I don't know why I never got around to seeing that film when it was in theaters, but I didn't, sadly. And we actually talked about Nightmare Alley for longtime listeners on this podcast before. Yeah,
for the real fans.
Yeah.
You skipped over me. He didn't even ask you. He said, Blake and Jason, what's your...
Oh,
I'm sorry.
So, you dirty little thief.
Well, I come first.
So obviously I've seen this, Shape of Water, Nightmare Alley, both Hellboy movies, and Kronos. Kronos probably being my favorite of his. This is better. Like, this is his best movie, I think, personally, but I don't know what it is about Kronos. That movie is just a lot of fun. I think I probably will recommend it at some point in the future, because I really want to do a rewatch, and I think it'd be fun to talk about.
Yeah.
I think my first movies from him were probably the Hellboy movies, which I really liked. I remember really liking the second one, but I think I only saw it like once. But I did rewatch that first one like a shit ton of times when I was younger.
I went to the midnight showing of Hellboy 2.
The Golden Army.
Dude, I miss midnight showings. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I do.
There's something special about like waiting outside in line and then, finally getting able to
especially being that age.
Yeah.
The age I was when I saw Hellboy 2. It was
How old were you when
cool.
Hellboy 2 came out?
2008. You must have been, what, 42?
Yeah, 42.
78.
That was 2008?
Yeah.
Okay. I was 16. Yeah.
Prime time.
Yeah, it was like the best time.
See, I've got a very different experience with Hellboy 2. I never saw Hellboy 1 or Hellboy 2 in theaters. I saw them exclusively on the Sci-Fi Channel on TV, because those were movies that were constantly just on there and stuff.
Yeah.
I think I saw the second one in theaters, but the first one on DVD, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Pans is like sandwiched between the Hellboy films, because he had already really started taking off as like a Hollywood director. So his decision to kind of return to like Spanish language films, I think that takes a lot of balls because apparently they really pressured him.
Yeah, they offered him a ton of money.
Yeah, they're like, just do it in English, do it like, Hollywood American style, and we'll gift you what you want. And he refused. He didn't give in, and it shows like, his artistic integrity is what really shines through.
Yeah, I think this movie would have been significantly worse off if it had been done in English. It just, the writing of this film is so poetic. And also, it gives you an opportunity, just watching a foreign language film, to notice the sound design more, right? Because it's weirdly enough, like when I watch this film, I'm able to notice just, all the little tinkling of glasses and just a lot of the Foley artistry that went into this film. And it's so precise and so perfect throughout it.
Also, if it was in English, wouldn't they have to kind of rewrite it to make it make sense? Or would they just have it be in English?
I think they'd probably just have it be in English.
And they just would have like American or at least English-speaking actors in all the title roles, which I think you lose like a big sense of like credibility and authenticity for it, where it's like these are Spanish actors speaking from, I don't know, a lot of them perhaps really had like relatives that like most likely had relatives that lived through fascist Spain, and they could have had some kind of direct link to this. And having people who are disconnected from it or from that is, you lose a lot, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it seemed like all the actors in this film were really into the roles. They were really committed to putting on a good performance, especially when it comes to like Mercedes. She did a great job.
She's so good.
Oh yeah, and
best character in the movie.
And the captain, I forget what his name is, but
Vidal.
Captain Vidal. Yeah, just really good villain. Right
yeah,
there.
I was gonna say this is one of those top villain cinema movies here. One day we'll come up with a list of like the best movie villains, and he would definitely be on it. But he's just kind of misunderstood. He's a real good guy,
Sure.
He just wanted the best
Blake's
for
a
his son.
fascist.
Yeah.
he just wanted the best for his people, the best for his daughter, the best for his son, the best for his wife.
Not for his daughter, for his son only.
He cared for her too. He was really good with her, right?
Yeah, especially when he shot her.
Especially when
Yeah.
he fucking murders her at the end.
It's called tough love, guys.
He was mercy
Spoilers.
killing her.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, we just want to get her to deal with the communists that are coming. Best just to shoot her now.
Mercy kill.
Yeah.
Surprised you didn't laugh at that, Miles.
Why would I laugh at that?
Well, last time a child was killed on screen, you just had a ball.
I wasn't
Cackling.
I wasn't laughing about the child dying. I was laughing about his realization that he like literally like sacrificed his
killed
soul
his
for
dad.
nothing.
That makes it so much funnier.
No, I was laughing at the futility.
Every time you say something, it gets worse.
Okay, fine. Whatever.
All right. Do you guys want to go through the plot of this film?
Yeah. It's
Yeah. So
right. So we start off with the ending, which is nice. It's like in reverse. It's literally you see the blood dripping backwards.
I don't think it's in reverse. I interpret it as being after the end that we see at the end of the movie, and that she doesn't actually die.
So you think like
her blood's
she's coming
going
back to life?
Yeah, I feel like she's coming back to life because no, because
We'll get into this at the end.
If that's the
Let's
case,
get
let's
into
have a
this at
whole
the end.
section.
okay,
Yeah, we'll get
talk
into
about
that.
that at the end.
Dropping bombs, Miles.
What are you, a forest fighter? You completely disrailed this train. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so we start off with at least the blood going back into her face. She's like laying there dying, and Mercedes is humming, her lullaby to him. Where we also learn the fantastical story behind it, which is that one day a princess had like escaped from the subterranean kingdom and came to the north, and she lost all of her memory, and she will one day be reincarnated. And in this, it's heavily implied, and that it's Ophelia. We see little Ophelia arriving, going through the forest with her mom, who is like heavily pregnant, and who the doctor is like, she should not be traveling because she is in late stages of her pregnancy. But he's like, I don't give a fuck. my son has to be here, born with his father. It's like, what a great dad. You know, he just wants to be there.
He wants to love his son from day one. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
So eventually they get there, and we get our introduction to Vidal, who is like right away immediately telling the mom what to do. He's like, you're gonna sit in this wheelchair. She's like, oh no, I'm okay. He's like, no, you're gonna sit in this wheelchair. Just exuding his authority over her. I like how even they introduce him with him looking at his stopwatch, and he's like 15 minutes late. Like, just you already see the mechanical workings of his mind, which contradict the, you know, like the earth elements, the, you know, all the natural stuff that we see surrounding him, at least especially with Ophelia.
Well, one of the things you see out of that, though, is that he doesn't really have love or compassion for his wife, right?
No, it's all about his son. He
Yeah.
doesn't give a fuck about her.
Yeah, but the only reason he cares about his son is because he wants to show up his father.
Yeah,
Right,
I
and
don't even
upstage
think
his
that
father.
it's that he
Yeah.
even wants a son. It's that he feels compelled
Yeah,
to have a son.
and he needs to be better than his father,
Yeah, he's
and that's
got-
the only way that he feels that he can be is by raising his son better than his father raised
He's
him.
got like daddy issues, and
Yeah.
it's also a legacy thing, right? Having a son, it's a bit of a legacy narcissistic thing as well.
a little bit.
We
yeah.
definitely get more into his father later on.
Oh,
in
yeah.
his
Sorry,
thoughts.
we're-
No, it's
yeah.
okay. But like you see, they definitely do highlight it more. It's a mix of subtlety and not so subtlety, like
Yeah.
throughout. But like, so then we get into introduction to Mercedes, who is going to be who's kind of the caretaker, but not really. She kind of runs the household, like the mill and like all the people in it that are like, you know, maintaining it for the captain and all the men.
Yeah, she's like in charge of all the non-military people that are stationed there, I would say. That's when Ophelia first walks into the labyrinth.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And, you know, Mercedes follows her in there, and, you know, she explains, oh, you know, don't go in there. You'll get lost, you know. Labyrinths are designed to confuse people, and you can't find the center. And, you know, it adds that kind of air of mystery to it. And you start to see the fairy, which we didn't mention, but on the car ride, she sees a quote unquote fairy, but it's just kind of a little bug at this point.
Yeah.
And you see it watching Ophelia.
And I love the introduction of the labyrinth itself, because it just has this very ancient, like dark, like almost like you can see there's a lot of like old like Celtic and like Druid influences to it. Like it's like she says like this, it's just a thing that's been here like forever. Like we just don't know. It's older than the mill. It's been here since like, you know, who knows how many countless generations it's been there. And it could have been built by, you know, Druid people 1,000+ years ago, you know. And it's like, and I love that it kind of taps into that, because Spain has like this old history of Celts. Like the Celts used to populate most of Western Europe, but now we kind of only think of them as like Irish and stuff, because that's just kind of where they all had to retreat to. And eventually that was like kind of the last hold before eventually, you know, Christianity kind of took it over.
And
But
I do want to say this also. This is a weird aside, and it kind of follows up later in the film, but it sets up a little bit, you know, by having the labyrinth right there, right next to the mill, and not like deep out in the forest somewhere, right, where you feel like the mill has been built basically on top of these old ancient ruins.
Yeah.
It makes it so that when she later goes into the Thin Man's Lair, I don't know what you would call that place.
Yeah.
It feels almost like it may be in another world, but it may not be in another world, and it might just be part of these overall ruins that were already there, and it feels believable for it to be there. I know that sounds weird, but
well,
like
it feels like it's
Yeah.
kind of like a portal to another.
But it also
dimension or
feels like
something.
it might
Yeah.
be, you know, real in reality in a certain regard.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It helps ground a lot of the fantastical elements, being that like there's the fawn, there's like you see the fairy too, the quote unquote, you know, fairy. It's like a stick bug kind of thing that is like beckoning her into the labyrinth, and then you even get that overhead shot as it's like watching her walk away, because it's like first thing it does when it gets there, it's like, hey, come this way, like trying to beckon her directly into the maw of the labyrinth, which is very cool.
Yeah, and also with Another thing that scene does is she drops her hat as she's running. And, you know, it kind of shows she doesn't like go back to pick it up. She doesn't care that it's there. It shows that she's kind of driven and she kind of ignores, you know, the normal kind of things that you should be caring about if you're, you know, in a socialite society.
Well,
she's you
Oh
know,
yeah, she doesn't care. And
Yeah.
then like that
and then that's
a huge
followed up
part of
later.
it, right?
with
Yeah.
that fucking dress, like
Yeah.
she was just like, you're so fucked when she was like
Yeah.
crawling through the mud.
Yeah,
And-
but we'll talk about that
Okay.
later. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it immediately shows the elements of like disobedience and how
Yes.
that's the big running theme.
So after that, you know, they go inside and they basically live in the fort for a little bit. She talks to her mother. She tells her little brother
Oh, yeah.
a story, tells him a fairy tale about a rose that grows on a mountain, I
That
believe.
grants immortality, right?
Yeah.
But it's surrounded by poisonous like thorns.
Poisonous thorns. And the only thing that the people can think about is the death and danger and not the potential.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful story to kind of kick this off, because this also, we didn't really mention this, but this is kind of two movies or two stories overlaid, right? You've got Mercedes'
Yes.
story and you've got Ophelia's story, and they parallel each other in a lot of regards. So having that there, it kind of gives a little bit of introduction into Mercedes' story a little bit. Yeah.
And we get a little bit as like we see the captain planning like certain offenses. He's like immediately like, okay, so we have to set up fortresses here. We have to do this and that.
Mercedes not so subtly is like, what's going on
Yeah,
here?
she's eyeing those maps, and she's definitely relaying that information, as we see later on, to her brother, who is in the woods, who is leading the counter force, the guerrilla fighters that are up there.
And then you also see the doctor handing off medicine
Oh yeah,
To her, yeah.
to Mercedes. And, you know, Ophelia sees this, and it kind of allows Mercedes to kind of like, instead of revealing, oh yeah, I'm working to the rebels, to Ophelia, it's kind of Ophelia has to guess at that later on.
Yeah.
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 And she calls her out on it later.
Yeah.
We
Not
also
in like a bad way, but
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, also just before this, like we in the scene where right before Ophelia tells a bedtime story, we see the doctor giving the sleeping pill or sleeping drops or whatever to her Carmen, the mom, and you see Ophelia immediately kind of pick it up and she's playing with it. We really kind of see her curiosity like right away, and that of course comes back right near the end. The importance of those, like, you know, sleeping pills or sleeping liquid,
Droplets.
yeah, definitely returns, because he tells her like 2 drops, that's it, no more. And then yeah, it comes back. We also get we see the doctor hand off the medicine.
And then that's when, after story time happens, where the story gets told. And then after that's happened, Ophelia and her mother fall asleep.
And I think this is when they meet the
Ophelia.
goat farmer. Or the
Oh
rabbit.
yeah, so then
Yeah, do not
Oh,
skip
the
over
rabbit.
the. Don't
Sorry.
skip over the great
No.
rabbit scene.
yeah, that's
Sorry.
fantastic.
Yes.
So we Vidal is notified that they've captured 2 people, and he immediately goes over there, starts interrogating them, kind of searching their bags. They're telling him like, hey, we're just here hunting rabbits because his sister is sick at home. And he's like, okay, whatever. And then he ruthlessly pounds in this dude's face with the bottle, just smashes it in like
In front of his dad.
yeah, directly in front of his father. And his father is, of course, crying in dismay. And then he shoots him. And then he shoots the guy with the smashed in face, just immediately showing how brutal and ruthless this guy is.
Just, it was the first time I watched this, it was so like unexpectedly just
Yeah.
cruel. And like, because I didn't get that vibe from
Yeah.
this movie prior to that.
There's-
It was
And
just so
it's
abrupt.
just it's so fucking shocking, and yes, abrupt. It's just like,
Yeah,
fuck, okay, we're dealing with there are stakes here, you know,
Yeah.
like if people can die like that, like shit can go down in this
What
movie. And it puts you on edge from that point on.
What I think works about it too is that there's no buildup. There's no like.
Yeah.
It's a little tense, but like you don't really get a feeling that anything that bad is going to happen. But it's just like with no buildup, no setup, he just like flips a switch and like murders the fuck out of these people. And it's like, ooh.
Yeah. And he's not that. He
And-
doesn't just shoot him either.
And he kind of does it to like make a point to his people too. That's not even like he's not really even punishing them. Like he kind of like because he goes through their bags and finds the rabbit and goes, "This will teach you to like look better next time."
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
And
like,
that-
make sure you search them properly.
Yeah, he's completely remorseless about
he
the whole
doesn't
thing.
give a shit.
And I think it sets him up as a really good villain where, because he has such a calm demeanor the whole time. But after that point in the film, and even when you go back and you rewatch it because you know him to be able to do that, he seems more aggressive in his demeanor, even though it's very calm, very straightforward the whole time. And you can feel the underlying violence. And you're like, is this going to be the moment that he breaks next?
He's a ticking time bomb at any moment. You don't know. Like, he could legitimately just kill someone at any moment.
And I think it also sets up one of the things I like about this movie where I feel like all of his people are like terrified of him, right? Because there's a lot of, like you said, obedience, disobedience. That's a huge theme in this movie. I don't think most of his men have that much confidence in him because there's several points in the movie where he says things and everyone's kind of just looking around like, what? But nobody's ever going to say shit to him except for, the people that do.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that. I don't know. I really like that vibe because I feel like he's a great villain, but he's also kind of like bad at his job.
Yeah.
And like every action he takes is the wrong one, but nobody has, or very few of them have the courage to ever speak up against
But
him.
I think
And
that's where his villainy comes from, right? Because we talked about the stuff with his dad, and we'll get more into that with the conversation that happens later. But his dad was, a heroic general, right? And he's trying to live up to that image, and he wants to either meet or surpass, what his dad was able to do. So he always wants to be in control and in command. And his constant failure to meet this high standard, I think, is what has driven him to be, very hyper violent, easy to snap, and kind of just overall disaffected with everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also get the sense that he's like just not as important as he would like to be in, like, he is a captain.
He's
sure.
a big fish in a small pond. In this
Yeah.
little region, he's the
If he was
Yeah.
that important, they wouldn't have just like the military wouldn't have just put him at this like tiny little fucking estate, I guess, in the middle of the woods. Like, it doesn't feel like he's as important as
As he thinks he should
Yeah.
be, or
yeah.
or especially compared to what we kind of learn, like the legacy of his father. He was like,
Oh, yeah,
this
definitely.
heroic, like big time soldier, and he kind of downplays it like a little bit later. But you can see that it affects him, and it kind of, definitely.
Guillermo knows how to do villains. His villains are always great.
Oh, yeah. So we have that scene where he is unremorseful about killing two, farmers who were just hunting for their dinner in the forest. And then that's when the mysterious fairy rears its head again to Ophelia. And Ophelia wakes up to see this little stick bug crawling on her and asks it, "Are you a fairy?" And when it kind of signals to her that it doesn't understand the question, she shows a picture to the stick bug.
It's like, that's a fairy.
That's a fairy. And it magically transforms. It becomes the thing that it saw in the image. Now,
it plants that seed in your mind. Like, is this real or is she just reading this book?
Yeah.
I think we should save that discussion for the end.
Well, of
yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a very creepy looking fairy, I would say. It's definitely not a fairy I would follow.
It's apparently it's a so Guillermo had in the first Hellboy there were some fairies that were inside of like what are they called, like not fermented like jars, like preserved, right, while like they're walking through, and Guillermo really liked their design, so he told his creature design people, like, can you make me that? And then they're like, yeah, sure. And he's like, but no hair. They're like, okay. And they're like, we thought it would look kind of weird. And he's like, no, but you just want to emphasize the insect like kind of qualities to it. So it's still like kind of an insect. So they have no hair. They have like solid black eyes, and yeah, they're a little creepy and off-putting. But the thing I love the most about them is their wings that look like leaves. It's so cool, and it really again ties together that like druid nature, like kind
Earthy
of vibe.
tones.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a great design. They just, kind of like they do look very bug-like.
I wonder if they taste
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, we'll ask the pale man.
Yeah, he gets a couple snacks.
Yeah, so then the bug fairy then leads her into the labyrinth, and she is able to enter through part of the labyrinth as it opens up for her.
I love how they shoot that like kind of from overhead. You're kind of tracking her. She's moving through, and you see like the branches like arching over, and as she's like descending, the camera just like pans down through, like you kind
Hands
of
down.
yeah. It like, you know, it shows like for that aerial shot of like the depth and that kind of like monolith thing that's in the center of it. And you see her like descending, and you just kind of, if you know where to look, and it's kind of easier to see now, I think, on like our like new TVs that like
Have more brightness, and you can see kind of
the fawn leaning right up against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But you may not catch it your first time through because he blends in so well with the environment, and then he of course, you know, snap and crackles back to life.
Yeah, and he's very, I want to use the word mechanical, but it's more so broken at this point. He seems like a machine that's broken. Like the movements aren't
He's rickety.
necessarily
Yeah,
rickety. That's a good
He's
word.
the rickety cricket.
Yeah.
He's got because he wanted to make sure that the fawn had a lot of wood, and he looks like he's almost made of wood and flesh kind of combined. And you definitely get that vibe, like he's like, you know, like an old piece of wood that's like tight, and again the sound effects, like you're saying, you really kind of hear it. Like every time he moves, he's got like that, like, you know, creaky tight wood to it, which is really great.
And he makes this like sound, like sometimes like it kind of sounds like a cicada a little bit bug-like when he's talking.
Cicada.
They're the little tiny
it's a bug.
bugs
It's
that come out every 7 years. They make like a little chirping noise.
Yeah, and like in different
Yeah.
like tropical areas, they just make very loud noises, especially in the summer. Especially like in Japan, you hear them all the time when they're like outside. In, like, films.
The
Miyazaki
Midwest
loves
of America.
cicadas. Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's very interesting where he brought together all these elements, and it seems like this fawn is both natural but also unnatural at the same time through its movements. And I think that it's just excellent the way that it's accomplished. And, you know, the fawn reveals to her that her real name is Moana, Princess Moana. Not to be confused with
The
the
Rock's
Disney.
gonna have some words.
Yeah. Not to be confused with the Disney princess. This one does not sing. And
Yet.
also doesn't know how to sail a boat, I'm pretty sure.
Just wait
You
for the
don't know.
sequel, all right?
Yeah.
My favorite part is when the fawn comes down and goes, "On pan," and this is my motherfucking labyrinth.
Okay.
Also, David Bowie's not in this movie.
I love that the fawn tells her like, oh, like you were like, because she's like, my dad was like a tailor or something, and he's like, like, no. He's like, you're not born of a man. Ugh. Like he like shakes his head like this. Ugh, no, you're better than that. And then he tells her like she was born from the moon, and I feel like the moon imagery is so important to Ophelia in particular. Like the moon kind of goes through cycles. It kind of, you know, wanes. It's associated a lot with like death and everything. And yeah, it definitely circles back around towards the end. But the moon has like a presence that kind of just maintains throughout.
It's almost like a timer in this movie.
Yes,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's not almost
a
a timer. It is
watch.
a timer, you know?
Yeah.
The full moon is very important. You know,
Yeah.
it's like everything's kind of counting down to that full moon night.
Exactly. He tells her that she
Yeah.
has until the full moon to basically complete the 3 tasks in order to be able to enter the subterranean kingdom.
Yeah.
And then he gives her the book.
Mm-hmm. And in this book, it is blank inside.
What?
But it won't be blank if she opens it alone, is one thing that is revealed. So at this point, I get it kind of confused sometimes, the order between the two kind of stories, because they overlap so much. But
So I think in the next day you see Ophelia get the green dress.
Yes.
And she's like, okay, now it's time for you to like, take a bath, put on this like pretty green dress. It'll be good for the captain to see you dressed like this. Before this, we saw Mercedes get the rabbits, and she's like, he's like, make a stew, and you kind of get like a good feeling for the other people inside the house. Like there's almost like a camaraderie, like, you know, the people that are just helping.
Yeah, they just think that Vidal is a joke. And and it's like, yeah, he's a joke, but we just got to do what he says, you know. It's yeah, so when she gets the dress, she goes in, and instead of taking a bath, she decides to look at the book. And as she opens it,
Boring.
on the pages of the book materialize the story of a toad who lives in a tree. And this toad that lives in the tree is a very bad toad.
Under the tree.
He's a big
Under
fat
the tree.
toad.
Yeah, big fat
He's
toad.
killing the tree.
Yeah. And
This toad's gotta go.
yeah. So she finds out that her
Gotta
task
make him puke himself up.
is to get 3 red stones, 3 magical stones, and feed them to this gluttonous toad that has occupied itself beneath the tree and is killing the tree slowly from the inside so that she can retrieve a key. Now, at this same time, it's very important to note this has just been revealed about she needs to retrieve the key.
Mercedes.
Mercedes goes to the storeroom and also has something to do with a key.
Yeah.
Do you want to
So
talk about
Vidal, he basically decides to store all of their supplies inside of the storeroom in the mill.
He's getting
And-
paranoid.
Yeah, he's like, we'll keep all of our stuff here, so that way, you know, really choke any kind of like resources that are getting leaked to the fighters up in the hills. So he says, like, he grabs the key, locks it, you know, and he's like, he turns to Mercedes. He's like, this is the only key, right? And she says, yep. You know, like, totally. And obviously she has a copy, which will come back later. So they both have a key, and keys are important.
Yes. And then he takes the key and he's like, I'm going to keep this on my person. So only he can access it, or people he give permission to.
Meanwhile,
Yes.
Ophelia goes to the tree, and you see this, like, I don't know, just super iconic, cool looking tree that she then takes off her dress. She doesn't want to get it dirty, right? And she crawls underneath it, and it's filled with mud and
leeches
and nastiness.
Oh, yeah.
Critters.
And you see basically this grotesque looking frog underneath it eventually, but as she's crawling, she's covered in pill bugs, giant pill bugs, mind you.
Yeah.
Like these things are like, I would say probably the size of like a golf ball when they roll up.
Yeah.
You're right?
They're huge.
Yeah, they're huge.
Unsettlingly large.
Yeah, and somehow she is managing to crawl through the mud and these creepy bugs that are crawling all over her without really like being phased by it, which kind of shows just how strong of a will she is and how focused she can be on her task. You know, like I was saying earlier with the hat, you know, she can only focus, kind of like laser focuses on one thing, and everything else kind of just disappears off to the side.
Yeah.
Right.
It also just shows like she doesn't give a fuck like about like anything that has to do with Vidal.
Yeah.
You know, like her task for that night from her family is to sit
Not be
down,
dirty.
look pretty, and don't say a word. And she's just like, you know what, fuck you. And she like goes and crawls through mud and like fights a toad or a frog. Like,
I've always thought like the main theme of this movie was escapism in a way. And
definitely.
And you know, this is one of those scenes, right, where things aren't going great and she escapes into her weird world with her weird fat frog. Because I've noticed that about this movie, especially upon rewatches, is every time things are going bad for her is when she like kind of retreats further into like the fantasy, right? The weird shit. Yeah, just an observation.
At the same time, we see Vidal, and he's because there's like some signs of a fire up in the hills. So they go out there, and then they find evidence that the rebels have some medicine. Interesting. So he finds the package that the doctor had handed off to Mercedes, along with a lottery ticket, and then he like calls out to them, basically like, "Hey, like you, like we're here. Let's like face off. Like let's go at each other."
I think he was also kind of baiting them a little bit with the lottery ticket when he says, "Oh, today could be your lucky day," and he's waving the lottery ticket around, like you know, "Oh, come back, get your potential for money. We aren't going to kill you. Don't worry about that." You know.
And then this leads into the dinner scene where Vidal is surrounded by a lot of his like sycophants. And
yes, men.
yeah, and the priest who's also there, I think, kind of just showing it's a Catholic priest who's like part of this like system and everything that is very entrenched in like Spanish culture, and it kind of like it showed like the new wave of beliefs and like spirituality that had taken over Spain after centuries of like much more ancient beliefs, like all that's kind of been washed away and filtered and everything.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stuff like when Carmen's talking about how she used to be married to a tailor.
Oh yeah,
right. You see that Vidal is like visually embarrassed by this because he wants to be a member of high society, and she's talking to the doctor's wife and the political officer's wife.
Yeah,
and
he basically just shuts her up.
Yeah, he's like, oh, they don't want to hear about that dumb story, but they don't want to hear about your dead husband that I stole you from. Like, he's kind of a dick about it to her.
Kind of.
Well, he really is a dick.
It kind of almost like plants an idea in your mind.
Yeah.
It kind of plants the idea like maybe he killed the father. He had him killed some way. Because like, fuck, why wouldn't he? Right? He just met her. He was like, like, and then just so happens to run into her again. I don't know.
I've actually never thought that.
But
That's interesting.
also, it shows just in that society that there's definitely a gap between the haves and the have-nots,
Yes.
right? And the working class and, the political class. And she's kind of from the working class. He's from the political class, and he's kind of embarrassed by the fact that, she was a lowly tailor's wife. To him, that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's
It's also the first time we hear the story of his father and his watch,
mm-hmm.
which we saw Vidal fixing earlier in the mill. He like gets this cracked, broken like wristwatch, or not wristwatch, pocket watch, and he gets it ticking and working again. And then later we hear in that dinner scene where he's like, oh, they say that like, when your father died, he smashed his watch so his son would know the exact time that he died. And he was like, ridiculous. He didn't carry a watch, which seems like bullshit because we literally just saw him fixing that watch.
Yeah. And the fact that it's cracked is interesting to me because it feels like he never like quite fixed that. Right.
I think for me, it kind of represents like him kind of trying to paste over his father's legacy, like lessening the idea that like his dad, would do this kind of gesture. Because later we see him try to mimic that, but I feel like it's more of his attempt to kind of like put his accomplishments over his father's, who apparently was like this heroic, like big deal.
He's probably a big piece of shit asshole.
Yeah, big,
probably,
big heroic fascist.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, in the eyes of Vidal and the other people, they're like, oh, he was a great man, and he's just like I'm better.
Is it better to be a good fascist or a bad one?
I think it's just better not to be a fascist. Yeah. So they're going through, they're doing the dinner thing, and Ophelia, at the same time, she has accomplished her task, and she
But
has
also
up a
failed
frog.
her task, right?
Well,
Yeah,
yes,
that's the next one.
she has accomplished the task that she chose.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And
She
she makes
blows
her
up a
way back
frog.
home. And
She makes a frog puke himself up.
and as they're talking about at the dinner about discovering the antibiotics, right?
Yeah.
Mercedes hears this and she goes out to see or to go pass a message using light.
Pedro, right? That's her
to-
brother's
to
name?
Pedro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
Pedro.
instead of finding a rebel out there or Pedro out there, she finds instead Ophelia. And Ophelia is sitting out there, or is walking back. Sorry, not sitting out
covered
there.
in mud.
Just
looking like-
covered in mud.
She went through the ringer.
Yeah, it had been raining at this point.
Yeah.
And Mercedes is like, "Oh, we've been looking all over for you," and rushes her back inside to her mother, who then scolds her for ruining her dress.
But
Rightfully so. It was a very nice dress.
I do like that she kind of tells her like, it's like, you really disobeyed me, and like you you really disappointed me. Well, it's like your father more than me.
Yeah.
Like she tells her like, look, like I'll be honest, like I don't really give a shit that much, but we got to be nice to this guy. Like he's such a great guy.
Yeah.
And then after that we get Ophelia returns to the labyrinth, and the Fawn tells her like, okay, good job. But and he's like, now you got to go do this other thing. Like, great job on bringing the key. This is step one. Next step will reveal itself as well. But what I like in that scene is you see the Fawn like emerge, but this time he's like eating a piece of meat. And I feel like there's like I'm not entirely sure the significance of that, but it definitely feels intentional. So like I'm like I feel like it almost creates this like link with him, like because later, right after this is when we get the Pale Man scene. So I feel like there's almost like a linking of them in a way.
Well, also there's a linking between the feast that Vidal had and the Pale Man's feast.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like a shot for shot remake, basically.
Yeah, and I mean that's super important because you see this kind of throughout all of the movie. The villain is Vidal, be it the frog, be it the Pale Man, be it himself. Throughout the film, and it's just how Ophelia sees it.
You ever thought maybe Ophelia is the villain and Vidal is just this nice guy who's trying really hard? You ever thought about that?
He's just trying to unite Spain, you guys.
Yeah. Remember, in Franco's Spain, everyone will have bread and fire in their homes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
This bread looks so sad, too.
Yeah, it's like a
It's like
tiny
war
little
rations.
loaf of bread for like a whole family. He's like, each household gets like a piece of bread.
Yeah, he's
and,
saying
like,
that
a
shit
fire.
on repeat.
Yeah.
So proud of it.
But also what I want to bring up about the feast is the reason why she ends up eating the Pale Man's food is because she doesn't
It's a
eat
day later.
Vidal's.
It's a day
yeah.
later. It's a day later. I thought that too, but it's
You
a day
sure?
later
That
on
has to
rewatch.
be, that has to be intentional.
I wanted that. I wanted that to be the thing, but I saw it more as her kind of disobeying and seeing what she could get away with. And he talked about it also. The scene that it was based off of is the hero is thirsty, right? In like the fairy tale, and he drinks a drink of water because he thinks no one can see. That deals with the eyes. So she thinks nobody can see. It doesn't matter if I eat, but then he brings back his sight. So that's the significance of her eating.
I think it's also you don't quite you never see her eat other than that one moment. Either,
Yes.
right? Because I don't think it's the only time you see her eat anything, because she does get sent to dinner without supper, right?
Yes.
And then we don't see her eating anything throughout the next day. I mean, yeah, it's implied maybe she did, but at the same time, it's like it's the only time when you see her actually trying to like. Ugh.
And
I've
I mean, there
always
was a lot of
thought-
stuff going on in between with her mother getting sick with.
Oh yeah, because
Yeah.
that's a big thing. Because the next time she gets opportunity, she opens a book and she's like, "All right, tell me what happens next," and
Yeah.
it immediately shows like ovaries and like blood and like holy shit, like her mom is not okay. Like she's bleeding all over the place in a very scary scene where she's like reaching out to her like Ophelia, and it's like Jesus Christ, like that's terrifying.
Which, by the way, beautifully horrifying shot right there.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, when you say there's horror elements in this movie, I would say that that's like the
We
closest.
don't just
that
say
you
it, Miles.
get. What?
We don't just say there's horror elements.
Fine, whatever. But no, like to me, that's a great horror shot right
Yes,
there.
yes,
right?
I agree,
You
I
know,
agree.
just the bloody hand reaching out, just drenched in blood. Like, oh, it's sad but beautiful at the same time.
We also soon after after Ophelia is like dealing with like the fallout of her mom and the doctors trying to help her but them not really being able to do shit, Mercedes is comforting her when Ophelia tells her that she knows that she's helping the rebels, and she asks her to sing her a lullaby.
Sorry if you could hear a cat in the background.
Yeah, my cat is very hungry right now. She is not adjusting well to the time change, and she does not realize that. Yeah,
Oh, I just realized that's what's
Yeah, that's
probably
why.
happening.
That's the
She's
problem,
like,
yeah.
yo, what the fuck?
she
Like-
thinks it's an hour later. No, seriously, this is She's just
Miles
gotta learn
does
to
feed his
adjust.
cat. Okay,
Yes.
just to be fair.
and
He
she
does.
she has food right now. It's just the dry food, not the wet food that she likes.
Ah.
She could eat if she really wanted to.
being picky.
You got
Yeah.
to teach her about the
the way of the world.
Just how time works, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, sorry.
Some families only get one ration.
Yeah.
This was Franco's Spain.
Yeah.
You'd get one loaf of bread. Okay, so after that, we see the Fawn goes. He sees Ophelia, and he's like, "Yo." It's like, "So did you get the thing?" And she's like, "No, my mom's like dying." And he's like, "What? Unacceptable." So he tells her like, "Here, just give her. Here's a fucking mandrake root, and just he gives her the instructions."
And he kind of like waves her off, like shoos her off, which the hand prosthetics that he has, he just uses them so well, and it looks like very creepy, like him just like, ugh, I don't care. Like, so what? Your mom, I don't know, you shouldn't care about her. She's not even like real.
Yeah. Which again, trying to downplay her connection to humanity and her family, at least now. But then he tells her, he warns her about where she's going, and he tells her like, it's gonna be extremely dangerous. And he's like, don't eat, don't drink anything that you see there. Like, you have to, your life depends on it. And then at the same time, right afterwards, we see the doctor returning to the rebel camp, where he is inspecting this dude's leg, which is looking great. It's only a little gangrenous.
Yeah.
The good old days of medicine when they just saw your fucking leg off.
Yeah.
I thought that was really funny. Like, there's not really profanity in this movie, except for the rebel when he's talking about his leg, and he's like, it's totally fucked.
Well,
Yeah.
Vidal does curse a lot. He calls everyone. He says coño, and like he's like motherfucker, and like hijo de putas, and like he's probably the most profane out of anybody in this. Like the way he speaks, of course, in his actions. But
I just thought it was funny that like this soldier was like, oh yeah, it's all fucked up. It's like
and it's like the little moment too where it's like the doctor isn't like he's obviously very compassionate for everything that's happening, and he waits till he gives it the patient asks for a moment. He's like, hold on. It's like right before he starts cutting his leg off, and the doctor waits, and then he starts cutting as soon as he asks him to, and then it's just another one of those like a quick moment where you just literal cut that like matches with a cut, and you just see the saw like is already like 3 inches into his leg, and it's
it went way deeper than I thought it was gonna go.
It's timed perfectly too.
Yeah,
where it cuts just so deep, so you like that it's kind of gonna be over with soon, but it cuts out once you can see it kind of go into the skin, but before you hear any screaming, before you hear anything else, and it just kind of goes silent. And it's like,
why would there be screaming? It probably feels like a massage.
And the reason that he's losing his leg is because Vidal stole their antibiotics.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then we go back to Ophelia as she's entering the pale man's domain with the chalk that she kind of draws. Which I don't know. I always loved that element of it where she just uses the chalk
To make little
just
portals.
to make a portal, because it's like something that a child would have.
which apparently that's based off a Mexican fairy tale.
Really?
Yeah, where a lady is put into prison and she draws a chalk boat in order to escape on the boat, and she escapes on the boat out of prison.
Oh, interesting.
So like I said, there's a lot of obscure connections where I would have never known about that fairy tale.
And then we get what's probably the most memorable sequence in this movie, which is her entering the pale man's domain. It's contrasted, I think, with like it's such warm and like inviting colors and everything. It's like you see the huge feast of food that looks delicious, and again, we haven't seen her eat or anything.
Freakishly large grapes.
Yeah, freakishly large. Those are some grapes like that. Have you tried one? Have you tried those cotton candy grapes?
Yeah, they're okay.
Yeah, they're okay. They're not all they lived up to be. Anyway, then we she has to. You see the horrifying pale man that's sitting there with his little eyeballs on his table, and then she has to make her choice between the 3 like little doors, and the fairies point her to the wrong one, and she decides on her own, like she senses it or whatever it is. She decides, no, it's not this one. It's the other one, and she was right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she opens that door, and inside is a knife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
Why do you think she did that? Why do you think she
I don't know.
switched it up? Was is that just like her rebellious streak? You think?
Probably.
Now, I want to say also with I think that she kind of just sensed that the door that looked more ancient, right? It was an old wooden door,
Okay.
right? The other two, one was made of silver, one was made of gold, right?
Yeah.
You know, like in Indiana Jones,
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Last
yeah.
Crusade.
Yeah.
Like I felt
What's it called?
kind of
The
an
Goblet
allusion
of
to that.
Fire or whatever?
No, it's not the goblet.
Not the Goblet of Fire.
Indiana Jones and the Goblet of Fire.
The Holy Grail.
The Holy.
Yeah, that one.
Yes.
Indiana, did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
Oh God.
He said calmly.
So I kind of I got that kind of feeling off of that scene. I don't know
No, I
if
get
that's the
that.
case, but
Yeah,
that
I
was the
think you got something because it's like the other ones are made of metal. They're a little more polished and everything, and then it's the one that's just like a humble wooden little door.
yeah. And apparently the knife is locked away in there because it's the one thing that can kill the pale man.
Oh,
And
really?
he fears it, and that's why he locks it away. But it's also the thing that keeps him alive, as after it's gone from that world, the world and him disappear.
Oh, very interesting. Is that from
How do you
Guillermo
know that?
himself?
Yeah. So there's also on the Criterion DVD, there's little comic strips, I guess you could say, about each of the different fantastical characters, about like the fairies and the fawn and the pale man and the frog. And they're short little like 2-minute things.
That's awesome.
But it's drawings and light animation describing like kind of their background and their backstory.
See, funny enough, I always figured that like because you see her, there's the chase sequence that happens, moments after. I always thought like the pale man is probably coming for her because you see that he at least comes into like the mortal realm because you see all the paintings and like of the tapestries of him killing and eating kids and mostly babies. But I was like, he's probably pissed. He's going to come after her at some point. So, like, even if she does become the subterranean princess and everything, like, there'd be, like, some kind of dispute or, like, some revenge or something. He'll like, meet up with her again in that other life or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But that's interesting to know. He's
Yeah.
Well,
gone.
It's notable that, well, I guess if that's the canon, but I've always noticed that the chalk falls down, right?
Yeah.
Technically, I don't know that he would know how to do it. Could he,
Yeah.
in theory, make a portal?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that would be really
he
cool.
could. That does make sense.
We'll see in Pan's
Wouldn't that
Labyrinth
be
too.
fucking funny if in the ending the villain
Pan harder.
if there's an alternate ending where Vidal wins, but then like you see the fucking pale man crawl out of like his floor,
Just like eats fucking Vidal. Just,
That would be weird.
and Vidal's like, tell my son when his father was eaten.
So another important parallel that happens is when Ophelia retrieves the knife, Mercedes has also concealed a kitchen knife at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And she hides it away.
we see a couple close-up shots of her
Oh, yeah.
using that
Classic
knife.
Chekhov's gun.
Yes.
And like she tucks it away underneath her apron and everything. But like in this pale man sequence it's the most horror. It's a straight up horror scene.
Yeah.
Where she's running down the hallway. You see the timers going off. The door closes. She has to like stand on top of the fucking chair as she's like drawing it.
She
It's
does
like,
it the most fucking hard way you could
I know.
possibly do this.
I always thought, I'm like, why didn't she just put it like below her?
Yeah, it's just
Or on
fucking
the-
drop
like,
into your.
like what? I don't know, but like the chalk breaks. You see her like bouncing on the very top of the chair, so she's like could fall it over at any second.
Is this a horror scene, Miles?
No, I thought it was
my
an
God.
action scene.
I'm sorry, the terrifying finger man with his eyeballs on his hands that eats
Actually,
children.
No,
His face is
I
dripping
will,
with blood.
I will agree. It is a pretty horrific scene. Oh,
Yeah.
also he manages to eat 2 of the fairies.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So, 2 of the fairies representing the stuttering man and the doctor.
Oh, you think so?
Oh.
Okay.
Of the 3,
Have you ever thought that the pale man, what's his name? Pale man?
Yeah, I think he just calls him the pale
You
man.
ever thought that the pale man's actually the good guy in this scene? She breaks into his fucking house, eats his food, steals his shit.
He's like, what the fuck?
He was just going to have a friendly chat with her.
So a funny moment though is right after this we get the scene where the rebels are like walking down the path after like, you know, the doctor had like sawed the dude's leg off and everything, and they're like walking towards the camera. I remember listening to the commentary like years, like probably like the first time I saw it or like the second time I rewatched it or whatever with the commentary, and Guillermo del Toro specifically mentions that they had to like basically CG the doctor's eyes, because as he's walking down past the camera, he like glances and looks like straight into the camera.
Oh.
But like Guillermo was so pissed, he was like, then the fucking doctor looks straight into the camera. He was like so mad. He was like, then we had to go back and like meticulously like, you know, paint out his eyes pretty much. And he's just like, it's just like he sounded so pissed off. Like, yeah, fucking doctor.
Well, wouldn't you be too if you got a great shot and then it was just ruined by somebody looking at the camera? I mean, also, I don't know. Most of these, I guess we should talk about it. Most of these actors, I don't really recognize their names. I don't know if any of them are staples of Spanish cinema.
It seems like they do have like a lot of Spanish credits. They're definitely
okay.
Yeah, I looked into it last night. I know at least Vidal's been in like a ton of shit.
Mm-hmm. The actress who played Mercedes, I swear I saw her in something else. I can't remember what though. But yeah, they're not known to us here, I suppose, which
Okay.
makes sense.
I mean, it makes sense, but I wasn't sure if they were, you know, just unknown actors or if they were just famous in a different place.
Yeah, I think they're just not famous to us.
Okay.
But we
Because
do.
everyone's fucking really good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're all excellent, but you know, there's a lot of great stage actors, you know, in foreign countries. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get a really great scene when Vidal is like shaving, and he just like
We got a lot of great scenes of Vidal.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and he just holds the blade up to his own reflection in the mirror and slashes at his own throat. And I'm not entirely sure what to make of that. What do you guys think?
I think that's supposed to, I don't know, imply some sort of hatred for himself. Like that is a very intimate moment that he has with himself. No one's around, and he's just kind of like, I get the sense that even he doesn't like himself, you know?
Yeah,
Or like an acknowledgement of just like the fucked situation he's in.
yeah,
Because look at it from his perspective, he's getting closed in on. He might win this, but it's not looking amazing for him.
yeah,
He knows that there's I think at this point in the movie, he knows there's a spy.
yeah.
He's caught on to some shit. I think it's just this like, he knows he's walking the line of life and death basically at every second. Because if there is a spy, they might even just kill him at some point.
Even like his wife is like dying with pregnancy, and it's very possible that the baby won't make it either. This is clearly not a like, you know, a normal pregnancy.
Yeah, he's not having a good time.
Yeah.
He's having a great time.
And then I think the next significant thing that happens, I can't remember if
It's the Mandrake scene.
the Mandrake scene.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the Mandrake scene, do you want to get into that?
Oh no, that's fine.
I don't. So basically, she puts the Mandrake under her mother's bed, and and she's been instructed earlier by the Fawn, needs 2 drops of blood a day, which kind of creepy.
In a bowl of fresh milk.
In a bowl of fresh milk. So she's doing this, and then
Her mother immediately starts getting better.
yeah, her mother gets better, but eventually, so the scene I was talking. Does the storeroom raid scene happen first, or does she make contact again with the Fawn first?
So right afterwards, like, you know, they tell Vidal like, hey, the baby's doing well. And then Ophelia, like, you know, she whispers to the baby like, hey, you know, you're hurting mommy. Can you cut it back a little bit?
Fucking relax, bro.
And
Just
then
chill out, dude.
And then the train explodes.
Yes.
Which then leads, you know, Vidal and all his men. He's like, everybody, like, you know, fucking go over there, which is, of course, a trap. It's exactly what the rebels wanted. And they raid the storeroom of all of its food and supplies and everything.
Using a key to open a lock.
Just sloppy
I
work on
hated
their
that,
part.
dude.
Yeah.
I'm
Sloppy
sorry.
work on their part.
Yeah.
Wait.
Just fucking shoot it.
Yeah, for
Wait,
real.
no. Guys, remember how I was talking about parallels earlier?
Uh-huh.
They used a key to open a lock. Ophelia had retrieved a key earlier, right?
Yeah.
She sloppily accomplished the task in the Pale Man of opening the lock, but she basically disobeyed exactly what she was supposed to do, like getting rid of the lock or whatever would be like probably the part of the task. And subsequently she gets in trouble for that.
Okay.
So is there a parallel there, do you think?
There could be, yeah.
Because is she just been brainwashed by a bunch of rebels, and the musings of her retrieving a key for the rebel leader and opening a lock and supposed to get rid of the lock, but she doesn't because she can't be bothered to do it. And then they get in and this fairy tale thing's not happening at all. And the people who get killed, the fairies that are with her, end up being the doctor and maybe her mother, maybe somebody else, I don't know. And the third one being Mercedes, who believed in her all along.
Well, the scene right after this is when
That was a lot, Miles.
I'm sorry. This is like my secret
Your favorite
background
horror movie.
interpretation. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say like that's when this is when the stutterer gets captured, and it's right after then the doctor is killed.
Yes.
But real quick, I wanted to go back to the lock. Maybe I misread it. I thought that Pedro had the key. But
that's what I believe.
But Pedro had the second key. But
yeah, so I thought he was the one who opened it up and then like fucking
but
took all the
how
shit.
did they get the second key? Did Ophelia retrieve the second key for Mercedes?
I think it's Mercedes gives the key to Pedro.
Yes.
Like when she meets up with them.
Yes, but did she get it from Ophelia?
I don't think so.
No, I think she just had it probably.
I think there could be a parallel story without it literally being the same
A one-to-one.
Sorry, I wanted to bring up a weird potential interpretation.
That's fine.
Good questions to ask, right?
No problem. But we do get one of my favorite scenes with Vidal. I mean, there's so many, but we see him like fighting the rebels, like going up the hill, and he is showing like, you know, what would be like standard, like considered like acts of heroism, where he's charging forward, he's leading the men, he's like, come on, this is the only way you want to die, and all that shit. And he's doing it, but also I like that he's glancing down at his watch a lot, like, okay, what time is it? All right, cool. It's like, is this the time I die? Yeah, like I gotta know.
You see that throughout the film, right?
Yeah,
with him looking at that
whenever
watch
he's
constantly.
stressed, he looks
when
at
he's
it.
stressed, when he's in danger, it's like he glances down, like he just needs to like ground himself almost in that like certainty. No matter what else is happening, no matter what all kind of chaos and everything's going to shit, it's still like, I don't know, 4 p.m. or something. Like he knows that. And then that's when they go up and then they capture the poor stutterer guy, and then so they bring him to be tortured. And what is like such a terrible torturing scene, which we don't see, but it's all implied after when the doctor comes back to visit him and we see what's left, you know?
Yeah. His hand is in like 2 pieces.
Yeah.
It's cut down like the web in between
Just so
his
nasty.
middle and what's this finger called?
Pointer.
Ring finger.
Yeah.
It's gross. I don't like it.
Yeah, very nasty.
No bueno.
Yeah. And he obviously, says something.
He reveals there's a spy.
Yes.
Yeah.
He says, I didn't reveal much. Motherfucker, that's like the most key part of your operation.
Yeah, he could have been like, we had a guy who lost a leg. But right after that, we also see the Fawn return to Ophelia, and she tells him that, oh, look, I got the knife. And he's like, oh, that's great. And then like the fairy whispers in her ear what happened. And he's like, you, like, how dare you?
He gets so mad.
Yeah, he's like, you've messed everything up. This is it. Like, sorry, you completely blew it. I told you to not do this one thing. It's the thing you did. So then he's like, we're out of here. You're gonna grow old as humans. You're gonna die like a human. And he's like, and we're all gonna like basically fade away because of you and everything.
Is there an allusion to like Christianity with that whole thing too? Right? She eats the forbidden fruit in a sense.
Oh yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of Christian beliefs, especially with Catholicism and everything. There's a sense of guilt and repentance, and like the sin. Like we're all sinners. We carry that with us. There's the original sin, and the idea of like that being repaid through blood, like the blood of Christ and everything. And then with Catholicism, it's like you basically like with the Eucharist and everything, you're kind of like cleansing yourself, and you have to like do certain trials, usually like with the rosary and stuff and confession. Just like, so I think there's some very direct parallels. Not direct, but like at least like inspiration there from.
I mean,
that, yeah.
You know, yes, it's significant to Christianity, but it's also significant to a lot of other cultures and traditions as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there's things like fasting, not being able to eat, or eating something that either purifies you or curses you, makes you either holy or unholy, is very important. And, you know, the story that the whole thing with eating the food was based off of the Feast of the Fairies, I think he called it, or some variant of that, right? Where a hero goes down and finds a fairy feast, but it's food that's only meant for the fairies. So if he consumes it, then he loses the part of himself, and then he becomes trapped in the world of fairies. And that's like the illusion that Guillermo was going for with that.
I mean, there's even stuff of like I think it's Persephone and what happens with in Hades when she eats the pomegranate.
Yes,
and there's even a pomegranate I think that's like right next to the grapes as well, to kind of show that like she goes into this underworld and she eats it, and then that could condemn her. But instead of being condemned to below, it's reversed. She's condemned to the the surface world, the above. Yeah, and mirroring that and the idea of like, well, where is hell really? Is it above or is it below?
Well, I mean, she is going through 7 circles and 7 gates in order to get to her father's kingdom.
7? What? You think 7? I don't know.
What? No, he said 7 circles and 7 gates.
Does he say that?
Yeah, Pan says that.
I thought he said she had to do like 3 trials. Is it not?
Yeah, but like he also mentions that like the kingdom is
within the labyrinth.
Within the labyrinth, there's like a gateway to 7 circles and 7 gates that enter into her father's realm. Yeah,
that makes sense. There's some Dante's Inferno in there too.
Yes,
sweet.
Lots of mythology.
Yeah.
And then so after he basically curses her to like no bueno, we get the double whammy of Vidal finding the antibiotic in the doctor's case and linking it to the one he found in the rebel camp,
which concerns me because okay, so ampules of antibiotics are very common, right?
I was thinking that too.
Okay, and the thing is, like, if they had been filled to the exact same level, or if there had been a defining mark on them, like, oh, this had the same maker's mark or something, like I could have drawn the parallel connection. But there were 2 plain glass ampules with clear liquid in them, filled to different levels, which if they were coming from the same place, wouldn't they be filled to the same level? I'm sorry,
it's a movie and it's a visual medium. I really think that's the answer.
I think it's also like it definitely strengthens his suspicion of the doctor, but then what the doctor does immediately after that is what it locked him in no matter what.
Puts it over the edge.
Yeah, because he tells him to like basically try and fix up the man as much as possible, and he defies that order by just putting him out of his misery. And so even if like he was going to torture the doctor or try to like figure out more clues or something, it didn't matter because he was already like, you know what? He's like, oh yeah. So then and he seals his fate, and probably he does it in the best way possible by just pissing him off by telling him like,
it's the best line of the whole movie.
Yeah. He says like, to obey like blindly without thinking. He's like, that's only something people like you do.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Such a badass dude. I love how he just fucking picks up his briefcase, walks away knowing he's about to get shot. And the way, even after he gets shot, he doesn't turn around. He just like kind of tries to
I'm living my fucking life as long as I can.
He kind of tries to keep walking, and then he just falls over.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see the blood start to kind of spread on his shirt after he gets shot, and then he just falls.
He just removes his glasses.
Yeah.
It's as dignified a death as he could have had in that moment, for sure.
I feel like there's a lot of dignity in death throughout this film.
Oh yeah, and then indignity towards the end.
Yeah.
I think,
dignity and defiance.
Oh
right?
yes. Yeah, and then right before that too, like Vidal had found the mandrake underneath the bed and like basically tells the mother like, hey, like this is all your fault, this is your bullshit, and then orders her to destroy it, and which Carmen obeys, and she tosses it into the fire, and that immediately causes her to go into labor. And
Yeah, and die. And
Yeah.
guess who just killed the doctor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, fucking
Yeah.
Because then, he's like, shit, get the fucking medic guy in here, and it's like that guy's not delivering babies, you know. He doesn't understand. So then, immediately after her, there's a funeral for Carmen, not for the doctor. I'm assuming he's probably in a pile somewhere, and then that's when I think that's when Ophelia decides to steal the little vial filled with the sleeping liquid, which is we'll come back later. Oh, and then Mercedes goes to Ophelia and tells her like, all right, like I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And then she's like, okay, well take me with me. You right? Like I have nothing here really to to keep me here. And she just and she's like, oh no, I can't take you. But then they are both then captured because what is actually one right before that
The key.
Yeah, Vidal tells her like, oh, get me like a drink from the storage room, and she walks away, and then he's like, you're forgetting something, he shows her the key, and she's like, oh shit. So she kind of figures out that he's probably figured it out, or at least he's going to figure it out very quickly, so that's why she's trying to get the hell out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they make it off into the woods together. Yay.
Yeah.
Well, for about a minute. Yay.
Yeah.
And a great cut where they're kind of like looking around, like making sure they haven't been followed. And then they turn an umbrella. And as they turn the umbrella, it reveals just a whole big group of people right there.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. And all of the soldiers
They were
that have
right
followed
behind
them.
him.
Yeah.
Right there.
Right
And-
there.
And
Mercedes isn't very observant.
She is not.
Mercedes is then captured, and Vidal like is gonna torture her again, as he has been, he finds all the little supplies that she had and everything, and is like going through the spiel of like, oh, I'm gonna use this tool first, then I'm still not gonna believe you, this tool, that, blah blah, and then she immediately cuts herself loose with that knife that we saw earlier, and she does like the best like fuck yeah moment when she like she stabs him at least 4 times.
No, she stabs him once in the back, once in the front, and then she
Slices his face.
Yeah,
slices his face.
it's on the back, the shoulder, then in the front shoulder, then I think like on the other shoulder.
no, she stabs him in the back, and then she kind of like leaves it in there. She's holding it. Then she pulls it out. He turns around, and then she stabs it into his front, like right above where his heart is, right?
Yeah.
And then she pulls it out, and then he's like trying to like get at her as he kind of slumps to the ground a little bit, and she puts the knife into his mouth, and she's holding it there.
And then she tells him like, I'm not just some injured soldier. I'm not an old man, And then
I like her line too, because he dismisses his guard, which is kind of his downfall.
yeah.
And he says she's just a woman, and she goes, "That's why I got away with this. I was invisible to you."
Mm-hmm.
And what a badass moment that's when she takes him down, basically too. Although she does fuck up, she
doesn't kill him.
Keep going.
Yeah, she really.
That's a
should've
movie
Yeah.
staple. They never kill
Yeah.
the villain in this.
You gotta
just stab him until he's not fucking moving.
Exactly. It's like you didn't need to cut his lip. You could have just like stabbed a little bit lower on his chest, and then this whole issue
right into his
would be
fucking
done
neck.
with.
You were
Yeah.
right there.
And then, she tells him, she's like, "Don't you dare touch the girl. You're not the first pig I've gutted." And then just slashes his fucking cheek open. And then we get that. I don't know. It's just like that slash is so
Satisfying.
Yeah, it's satisfying and like precise. It's just very emblematic, I think, of a lot of Guillermo del Toro's choice of like violence. When he does violence, it doesn't necessarily feel gratuitous, but it feels very precise. And
It's very visceral.
Yeah, it's like it's such a specific type of violence. Like we've seen, we just watched a bunch of horror films. Most of the time, when someone gets like stabbed or slashed,
It's just funny. It's
yeah,
fun.
it's just kind of. But he chooses to like no. It's this very particular thing. So even like when he's yelling, you see his mouth
It's like falling apart.
Yeah,
Well, it's deliberate. All the violence in this movie is very deliberate. It's not, haphazard, like somebody, slashing away for their life or shooting for their life. A lot of it. It's like, no, like even when he's smashing the guy with the bottle, it's very deliberate.
Del Toro
all the
really
strikes.
likes to.
Yeah.
He's like a thing for faces. Like he that goes through like the monster and creature design to like the violence, I think, because there's in this film, there's one in Crimson Peak when the final kill, when spoiler alert, but a character gets stabbed in the face, which that stab parallels the shot for Vidal at the end of this movie, where like even their eye kind of turns red and like rolls back. To like I think even a Shape of Water has like an almost the same thing where a character gets like shot in the face. But it's a thing where he like likes to really zero in on like shit that makes you wince,
Yeah.
like not just like a generic shot or stab. But yeah, then after Mercedes tries to run away for a second time, she is nearly captured again by the cavalry. So this is like pretty much like cavalry usually is like a bunch of the leadership, the officers and people that are like kind of in charge. So these are like more of the higher ranking guys who all get wiped out immediately by the rebel forces. So that puts Vidal in a way tougher position. His second hand is gone, and most of his like top men are also most likely all dead at this point.
And they've got about 20 guys left.
Yeah. And the rebels are closing in with at least 50, maybe more. And it's like that's when you see Vidal have that, oh shit, like I really have fucked this up, have I?
Mm-hmm. And then Ophelia during this time is contacted by the Fawn again and is told, hey, you know how I said you weren't welcome back into your parents' kingdom? Well, you can come back, but only if you bring your little brother to the middle of the labyrinth.
Yeah, we just need your baby brother.
Yeah,
That's it.
Just we need some babies. So she does that.
Before then,
yeah,
we get a scene that I
yeah.
really love where the Vidal is like stitching up his face, which they achieved through both practical and like CG. So they had
It looks fucking great.
It looks so good. So they had like the practical like slashed area like on his face that he's actually putting like a real needle and thread through, like just like, which is like crazy. That's only a couple millimeters like above his real skin, which is terrifying. And then through the middle, he has like the little like blue screen that they kind of enhance later to show it going through. So he's really stitching it up and everything, and it just oof. And then I love it's like as it's happening, Ophelia is like sneaking around using the chalk to like try and get to her brother. But you see him after he puts the patch over on, he like takes a shot of the whiskey or whatever, and it's like it just
starts bleeding.
Yeah.
Oh god, just again that stinging wince.
Also, dumb shit. Didn't you know that was gonna happen?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he might have done it on purpose. Alcohol can be used as a or a disinfectant.
It's gonna hurt before it feels better.
I think it was more of he just needed a fucking drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Is it whiskey? I've always assumed tequila.
And he goes right.
Sorry, that's
What?
No, I think it's probably whiskey. Yes.
Yeah. And he immediately goes back to get another shot afterwards.
Yeah.
It's not like he's just like,
Well, no,
oh,
his
that
baby
hurts.
starts.
I shouldn't do
The baby
that.
starts crying, and he pours himself a shot. He's like, ah,
Yeah, he wanted his baby so bad, but like he's just drinking instead of tending to it. And
Well, he's fucking killed all the people that would take care of it for him.
That's true. That's true.
he's like, wait, I have to do things with a baby?
Yeah.
So this is the point where he actually gets alerted about the rebels, right?
Yeah, they're like, hey, it's because they're like one of the guys came back down from the mountain, and he's like fucked up. So he goes and he tells them like, hey, so basically, everyone up there is dead. They're coming down. They have a shitload of dudes, and we're in some serious trouble here.
Yeah. And then Ophelia, at this point, then
Puts the sedative in
puts
his
the
shot.
sedative in the shot of whiskey or tequila or whatever it is.
It's whiskey. It doesn't look like tequila.
I don't think it's. Sorry, I laughed earlier because it's Spain.
It's
I don't
Spain,
think-
yeah. It's not Mexico,
I
Blake.
know.
It's okay. I'm
I
sorry.
know.
Yeah.
They don't make tequila in Spain.
I mean, I'm sure they do. But
I mean, I don't know if they had agave back then.
It
No,
actually
they
might
did.
be
They definitely did.
brandy.
Imported.
yeah, it could have been
Could've
brandy.
been
Spain had been
brandy.
all over Mexico at that point.
Yeah.
I want to say it might have been brandy.
It might have been.
Why are
Yeah,
you so against it just being whiskey?
Probably. I mean, it's probably brandy, right? He's like a
I think it's
aristocratic
brandy.
guy. Yeah.
If I was a betting man.
Yeah. And then we see him takes that second shot again, and then as he's, right then there's a big explosion from the rebels attacking, which I just love because it really just motivates Vidal to like look directly behind him, and that's when we see Ophelia standing there with the baby, and it's just like, oh god, like she was about to get away, and then you see the effects like already hitting him as like the world is like warping around him, and he's like, "What the fuck?"
Like
You know,
everything is falling apart. His
Yeah.
house of cards is slowly burning.
everything is like just come crashing down.
It's such a chaotic, fucking great sequence too.
Oh yeah,
And this is really the point where both of these intertwined storylines start to come together, right? Because you don't really see Ophelia directly interacting with Vidal much throughout the film, other than, you know, when they first meet and when he's chastising her for having the mandrake root. You know, this is only basically like the third time that they've talked or interacted.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you know.
Yeah.
And then he chases her directly into the labyrinth, right? Where they show the labyrinth kind of opening up for her, which is really cool. And then you like, which is why I kind of like, again, it's like, is it more magical or not? I mean, I guess she would probably already know her way through the labyrinth at this point, right?
Yeah. Which
'Cause-
would explain why she was able to get there sooner.
Yeah, because then he's also like wandering around. He's all, you know,
He's
drugged
like, you know,
and fucked
dying
up.
and
The scene is very reminiscent of The Shining to me.
yes, very
yeah.
much so.
There's a little more horror elements in there. And then we see the Fawn who's holding the dagger, and she's like, "All right, now give me your baby." And she's like, what's with the knife, dude?" And he's like, "Oh, it's just a drop of blood. Like, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it." And she's like, and her true final act of disobedience, she says, "No." Like, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And he starts getting mad at her. He's like, No. He's like, "Come on, this is the last chance. You've already had multiple chances at this point, and you've failed. This is not going to happen again. This is it. It's going to be over if you're not willing to give this, you know, the blood of her brother up." And she says no.
Yeah. And he was like, "Okay, then, fine." And then walks
later.
away. Yeah.
He goes, "Peace," and then disappears into the hedge. And then that's when Vidal shows up, who doesn't see the Fawn. But this is one of those instances where it's like, you would think that just like makes it like concrete that the Fawn isn't there. But I think at one point he mentions earlier like something like along the lines of like, you won't be able to see us anymore, or like, you know, that she's not special enough, or like you know, because she's giving up her.
Also, Vidal was under the influence of heavy sedatives. So,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
true.
He might not have been able to see it
You've been like,
because,
whoa, this shit's strong.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I feel like there's enough leeway there where it's
Well,
like,
we'll save this for the last discussion.
For sure.
probably. We're almost there, guys. We can talk about the ending.
then she takes Vidal takes the baby and then just fucking point blank shoots Ophelia, what the fuck's her name?
Ophelia.
Ophelia.
Ophelia in the gut, and it's already like heartbreaking. And then where he is met outside by all the rebels, and it's another one of the most satisfying scenes in the whole movie.
It's the best scene in the whole movie,
Yeah.
dude. The tell my son no. He
Yeah.
won't even
Yeah.
remember your name.
Bam, just kills him immediately, and he's just like, oh, and then just
Also, the way that he gets shot, where he gets shot just like right through the cheekbone, and then you see basically he's like just standing there. He has a very noble death, I will say. You know, he gets shot and he kind of just collapses. Like, it's inevitable that he's gonna die, and
Yeah.
you see just blood rising in his eye, a little bit dripping out of the hole in his face, and it's just like, and then he drops.
But even then, it's like that.
Yeah.
What was arguably like the most important thing for him in that moment is stripped away, just kind of really taking away anything that would have been important for him in his death, right? Because like his whole thing was like about leaving that legacy and everything, and it's gone. And you see that moment of regret and like, you know, like pain in his face right as he dies. He's like, like fuck, like just everything for nothing, pretty much all this for nothing.
Yeah.
And it's so satisfying.
And then we get to the point where the rebels, led by Mercedes, rush back into the labyrinth and find Ophelia dead on the edge of the pit in the middle of the labyrinth, dripping blood. And the blood drips.
She's not
drips,
quite
drips.
dead.
She's
yet.
dying.
She's pretty much dead at that.
She's still breathing.
She's
Yeah.
dying, which is going
You're-
to be very important for a point I'm going to make in a couple minutes.
So she is breathing,
Yeah.
but she's like hyperventilating and bleeding out.
Yeah, and
And-
it's dripping into the pit, dripping on the stone in the center of the pit.
Yeah.
And then you see it kind of activating and transporting her to the moon where the palace is, or maybe
at least
to the
I think the subterranean, the
underworlds.
underworld,
Yeah.
where she gets like beckoned by her father, who tells her like, well done, you did what you were supposed to do. You passed, you didn't give up the blood of the innocent, but you gave up your own blood, which was the final and most important test. And and you really feel it at this point.
Yeah.
The movie, I'm in tears,
Yeah. And then
I'm
if you
crying.
cut-
Ron's crying. Miles is laughing.
So I wasn't laughing.
No, I'm just kidding.
Then if you cut the first scene of this film onto the end of this, you then see, because she is now given that drop of blood, the single drop of blood, she has now become immortal again. And the blood is being reabsorbed back into her. And she is coming back to life as Mercedes, who was not sitting behind her before when she was at that state of bleeding out, right? She'd already started bleeding before Mercedes sat down behind her.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. But during that shot, you can see Mercedes sitting behind her in the background the whole time, which proves that it's not in reverse and that she is reabsorbing the blood and it's
Wait.
going
I-
fast
Okay,
forward and
Hold
she's
on.
coming back to life.
Let's get into this thing.
I'm sorry.
Are we just transitioning into let's talk about the ending?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
so, because
Okay.
that's pretty much the end of it. Because roll credits,
Yeah.
she's dying, or maybe not.
Well, maybe
But-
not.
But yeah, she's dying.
Well, either way, she's dying,
reborn.
technically.
I have,
Yes, yeah,
I have
either.
a question real quick about the ending. How does she
Yeah.
get into that chair?
What-
Maybe
It's such
the
a
fawn picks her up and puts her on there.
yeah, right.
That's maybe.
Maybe there's like a little ladder behind the chair. She has to climb up and then like put one leg over the
Also, is
the
that, all,
armrest.
is that all she's gonna do for eternity? Is sit on that
just sit in
fucking
that
chair?
fucking chair.
Well, I'm
be pretty
sure they're
boring.
like welcoming her in. She's probably got like to deal with like trolls or something. I don't know.
Yeah. If I get in that chair, I'm never getting out.
It looks so uncomfy to me, man. You're like high up. You can't really lean back.
It's like made of like stone and wood.
Well, my interpretation is the sad one. Sorry, everyone.
I agree with this. We talked about this last night.
Yeah, we did. We shouldn't have, but we did. I've always, because like I said, I've always seen, obviously, obedience is a huge theme. The main theme of this movie to me has always been escapism, right? Because even from the beginning, she's on a boring car ride. What's she doing? She's reading a fucking book. And throughout the entire movie, anytime things are going bad for her, she immediately retreats into her fantasy world with the frogs and the pale men's and the fawns. And this is the ultimate.
The fawns.
The fawn, sorry.
Ayy.
The ultimate evidence to me is it doesn't show her die and then cut into the underworld. It cuts to the underworld and then shows her die, and it's that order that cements it for me, right? Had it been the other way, if we see her like eyes close and then them reopen like in the fantasy world, maybe I could see it. But because of how that reverse, it just seems like that's her dying thought.
could see
She's
that.
kind of like, once again, going into escapism rather than dealing with this harsh reality that, a fascist has murdered her.
Yeah, I agree. I oftentimes, whenever like I'm watching a movie and it's like, ooh, is this real or not? And it's like, the fantasy elements. I like to just assume that the
Me too.
fantasy is real.
Me too.
But with this one, it's hard to.
Yeah.
I also like the interpretation of, does it really matter? Is there a point to reading too much into this, or is
That's why it's made.
Yeah.
But if you listen to some of the stuff that Guillermo del Toro himself has had to say about this film, and he says this about fairy tales, is that they don't always make sense, right? And he doesn't care about it being structured in a way that makes sense or necessarily tells a cohesive story.
I think he also said specifically the ending is that it's like almost like a Rorschach test where it kind of reveal really more about you than it does about the story itself, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just like a beauty in storytelling is,
I like
a good stories, usually have something they're trying to say and show you, but also they can, tell you something about yourself. And this film really strives in that. I'm definitely in the camp that I think the fantasy was real. I think there's enough little hints throughout that like make it feel that way. Like when she goes to like save her brother, Mercedes finds like the drawing on the wall, like in the chalk. Sorry, I'm like burping or trying not to burp. And then there's another part where like, and I think the very end itself, when they show the flower blooming on the tree, the old fig tree, right where she had put her dress, like, and the like the stick bug fairy is also there. It's enough to me that it kind of lends itself to believe that something like this would be real, especially with like this the style, like the old like ancient magic kind of feel coming from that labyrinth that just looks just a little too good. I don't know, like it's just something about it. It just really evokes that feeling of like of an ancient kind of like dark magic that just like is slumbering here, that is now being awakened by this girl. And I don't know. I think as for her like becoming immortal, I'm not. I like to hear your thought on that.
Well, I mean, that was my whole thought on it.
Okay.
I did read another theory on Reddit that someone had that I thought was kind of interesting. It's kind of like, what if we keep the elements of it being a sad story and keep the elements of it being a fantasy story and do both of those? And that theory was that she actually does fail her last task and all of this has been real, but the last scene is her imagining that she passed it as her dying thought, so she still dies immortal.
Dang, I think that's
That's
like
harsh.
that's brutal. See, I think it's like, because it's tragic no matter what. Like, whether you believe the fantasy is true or not, her death and everything that happened up to that point that we know really happened, it was brutal and sad, and so that's kind of inescapable of the reality of it, right? And the fantastical elements kind of help soften it, of course, like especially with her transcending or not. And so I think it's like it still works either way. But that's so great about it. But I'm definitely in the camp that I think it's she is truly like escaping back in, or like going back to the underworld, and she's a little princess, because I choose to believe that.
Okay.
Live in your fairy tale Mickey Mouse world.
It makes me happy. That makes me, guys, give me some hope, man.
Yeah. No, but I don't believe this, but I would like to develop, this theory more that I've got about basically the fantasy stuff isn't happening. It's her kind of justifying helping the rebels out, and all these stories that she tells herself are just kind of modified stories of what she's doing to help these rebels. Like I said, with, getting the key, breaking into the lock, right? Then the knife with Mercedes. And then there's also the idea that, are her and Mercedes actually the same person, and Mercedes sees herself as this little girl, right? And as she's the little girl going through these trials in her mind, is this a story that she told to the little brother about his big sister who, went through these trials and did this stuff, right? And is this her recontextualizing this in a story for him later on, as she cares for him, about the evil man that, ran the household?
I feel like if I was Mercedes, I would never bring up who her father was, who his father was. I'd be like, your sister was great, your mom was awesome, your dad, I don't know who he was. He died a long time ago. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, there's so many different ways that you can look at this film and interpret this film, and even just the individual elements. Everything kind of stands by itself as well as a whole.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts you guys want to have?
Nope, it's great. Watch it if you haven't.
Yes.
Sorry for
Yeah.
spoiling
If you
it.
watch it, and if you listen to this whole episode and haven't seen it, still watch it.
I don't know why you would listen to an hour and 3/4 episode without actually watching
Yeah.
the movie. But
and honestly, tell us what you think about it too.
Yeah.
The ending, how do you interpret it? Whose, I guess, side are you on? Or do you have your own interpretation that none of us thought about?
yeah, okay. Well, we really enjoyed watching this one. Who is picking out for next week's video?
Is that me?
Blakey.
I think it's Blake.
Yeah, I think so.
My Key-November, if you will, pick will most likely be The Mysterious Skin, the Gregoraki film.
Most likely.
So watch it just in case. That'll probably. I'm pretty sure that's gonna be.
I mean, we kind of need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got like less than a week to watch it. Is that what it's going to be, or what is it going to be?
Yes, it'll be The Mysterious Skin.
Okay.
Okay.
Mysterious
Gregoraki. So watch that movie. It's very heavy. Be forewarned.
Yeah.
It's
Watch it with your parents.
do not probably don't watch it with your parents. It's very heavy. Man, but it's Kino.
Okay.
So thank you for listening. Are we doing what we watched this week? We kind of went on for a really long
we
time.
went on.
No,
long
we went
time.
on too
Yeah.
long.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see ya, fuckers.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.